Hey everybody, Sean from Media Assault here, and this is episode number 2 of my 4-part Halloween movie series. And I apologize for being a little bit late on this. I started doing this towards the beginning of the month with my review of the movie Low, and it's taken me a while to get to part 2, so I apologize for that. But here it is, part 2 of the 4-part series. And today I wanted to do a review of a movie called The Burning. And this is a film that came out in 1981, and like I said, I wanted to do 3 reviews of movies that I haven't seen before, and then I'm going to do a review of a movie that I really like and think is a good film to show for your friends and whatnot on Halloween. And this is one of the films that I have never seen before, and I'm surprised that I haven't seen it before, or hadn't seen it before, because I have seen it now. Because it came out in 1981, which was at the height of the slasher movie genre, where everything was trying to kind of capitalize on the success of movies like Halloween and Friday the 13th, the original that came out in 1978 and 1980, respectively. So this came out, like I said, in 1981, and is plot-wise, it's fairly unremarkable. The movie's probably more notable for who's in it and who's involved with it than the actual plot. So let me tell you who's involved with it first, and then I'll get to the plot, and then I'll tell you what I thought of it. The story was co-written by Harvey Weinstein. The screenplay was co-written by Bob Weinstein. And if you're asking who that is, or who they are actually the founders of Miramax Productions, or Miramax Films, who went on to be a major player in the independent movie scene throughout the 90s and early 2000s. And this may be the first movie that they were ever involved with. And I believe their mom was actually a credited producer or co-producer or production assistant on this film as well. So that's kind of hilarious. This film features makeup effects by Tom Savini, who is well known in horror circles for, of course, doing the special effects on the original Dawn of the Dead film from 1979, and also the effects for the original Friday the 13th film in 1980. And he actually turned down doing the effects for Friday the 13th Part 2 to work on The Burning in 81. So that's kind of cool. And the cast includes some names that you may not associate with the horror genre. Jason Alexander, George from Seinfeld, is in this film. Fisher Stevens, who played in the movie Short Circuit, is in this film. Holly Hunter, who you may know from movies like Broadcast News and Raising Arizona and the TV series Saving Grace. Movies also 13, she was in that. She's in this, and albeit a very small part, and you may not even recognize her. She's hard to see. I think she maybe says like 2 words in the whole movie. And Brian Backer, who you may not know from his name, but you would know from his face. And I'll put up a picture of him right here. And now all of you are going, oh, it's that guy from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. And you'd be right. Rat from Fast Times at Ridgemont High. Brian Backer is in this film. And the soundtrack, the movie score, is actually done by Rick Wakeman, who probably provides one of the most inappropriate and upbeat scores for a horror film that you're likely to ever hear. It's not horrible, but it just seems really weird in certain circumstances, certain things. You know, somebody's getting chased around the woods, and the movie just seems oddly upbeat, which is kind of frighteningly evil and twisted in a way. I'm not sure, though, if that was intentional or not, but anyway, Rick Wakeman does the soundtrack for The Burning. So what's this movie about? Like I said, it's a fairly unremarkable story that goes pretty much like, I don't know, maybe 9/10 of the slasher genre goes. There is a summer camp caretaker named Cropsy, who is accidentally burned and disfigured by a prank that goes horribly wrong. Basically, there's some kids who decide they're going to get back at him by putting a flaming skull in his next to his bed, and when he sees it, he accidentally kicks it over, and his bed catches on fire. Strangely, it catches on fire somewhat like it would had he poured kerosene all over himself. But whatever, for the sake of the plot, he catches on fire and runs out of his cabin and runs into the woods, and apparently survives long enough to get taken to the hospital, where he stays for 5 or 6 years until he's sufficiently rehabilitated to the point where they can't do anything else with him, so they release him. And when they release him unaware that he's bent on revenge, getting revenge against these kids that did harm to him. So he somehow finds his way from the city back into the woods, and there's another camp. It's not the same camp that he was actually a caretaker for, but it's a different camp. He just starts preying on the kids one by one. One of the things that's kind of interesting about this film, as far as its differences from the genre, is that for the first maybe 45 minutes or so, there's really not a lot going on as far as actual action. I mean, the killing that Cropsey is preparing to do doesn't take place until the end of the film. And if you like your horror films, your slasher films with high body counts, you really have to wait for quite a while for that number to start going up. There's a lot of false scares and a lot of goofing around by the kids in the camp for the first half of the film, maybe the first hour of the film. There's really not a whole lot going on other than some really stupid teen angst plot lines that aren't even worth describing. But then when the movie kicks into high gear, it really makes up for it in spades. I mean, it just goes crazy with the hijinks, I guess you could call it, where Cropsey and his weapon of choice, this pair of garden shears, just goes really ballistic on these kids. Some things I liked about this movie is the fact that it does do that. It does make you wait for the payoff, and when the payoff comes, it's relatively worth waiting for. The special effects by Tom Savini, they look a little bit rushed. They're not horrible by any stretch of the imagination, but they're just not up to, say, his work in Dawn of the Dead or Friday the 13th, for that matter. There's one scene, and I don't want to spoil it, and it's probably the hallmark scene of this film. It involves a raft. If you want to spoil it for yourself, Google the burning raft scene, and you'll know what I'm talking about. But the special effects in that scene in particular just don't work. The overall scene itself is pretty impressive, even today, but the special effects, if they were slightly better, would make that scene much more enjoyable. So, did I like The Burning? Yes, I did. Is it a great movie? Absolutely not. Is it an enjoyable movie that you could enjoy for Halloween? Sure. It's probably one of those movies that would work well with a large group of friends. It's just dopey enough and campy enough, maybe unintentionally so, to be more funny than scary. Although it really tries hard to be scary, it probably pales in comparison to some of the things that come out now. For its time, it was pretty decent. Like I said, it did come out at the height of the slasher film craze in 1981. You're probably going to find a lot of other films that are better than The Burning in that genre, like Halloween and Friday the 13th. But if you've seen those movies 100 times and you're looking for something different, The Burning is worth watching. It's just different enough and just unique enough to recommend. I'd probably have to say I'd give it a 6.5, maybe leaning towards a 7, but 7 seems a bit too strong, so I'll go with a 6.5 out of 10. It's enjoyable. It's slightly better than the average slasher film. But again, the slasher film genre, unless you're talking about Halloween or Friday the 13th, is not necessarily a genre that's full of many movies of note, I guess. But for a Halloween film, a movie to watch around this time of year, really get into and enjoy with your friends, The Burning absolutely would fit the bill. So I do recommend The Burning, and I think you should check it out. And I did watch it on Netflix streaming, so you don't have to lay out a bunch of cash or hunt it down. It is easy to find if you've got Netflix streaming, and if you don't, Amazon.com does carry it, and I think it costs like $6 or $7 brand new. So check out The Burning from 1981, and it was directed by Tony Malum, who really hasn't directed too much of anything else, so it doesn't gain much from his name on the marquee, but just wanted to throw that in there in case anybody was wondering who was responsible for it, aside from the Weinstein brothers. So, like I said, The Burning is probably more notable for who's in it and who's involved with it than the plot. Plot is definitely nothing special, but as a slasher film, it's enjoyable, and you'll probably get a big kick out of it. And, you know, for as many friends as you add to the room, feel free to add a star or a digit to the rating. So 6.5 out of 10 for The Burning. Next up, I'm going to be doing a review of The Ruins from 2008, which I have not seen yet, and I'll hopefully get that online in the next day or so. And then I will be doing a special movie that I have seen and highly recommend for Halloween. So stay tuned for those two movies coming up at part 3 and 4 of my Halloween series. So this was part 2, The Burning. Check it out. And as always, feel free to subscribe if you haven't. Thanks a lot.